I'm back in the Zoom room, as you can tell by the virtual display behind me, and today I'm going to be talking to Matthew Deayton, who's the Global Director for Vega Global. I'm amazed by what you've done lately with Vega Global. It's an incredible situation where most other integrators seem to be, battening down the hatches and just taking it slowly and weathering the storm, but you've gone into this expansion mode recently, which has probably been brought out largely due to Baird Capital. Can you tell me more about that?
The build-up to Baird taking control of the business was probably a 2-year program, and they obviously, they took control of the business at the beginning of this year in January. So before that, Vega was pretty much wholly owned by Laurie. Laurie Chow was the founder, but he had grown it over that 30-plus year time span in a way that it was built organically. So there were different shareholding structures in all the different countries. The way that corporate structuring was done, it had organically grown, was a little bit, complicated. So it took us a while to get the business into a state that made it consumable by a private equity firm.
It sounds like it was a natural progression. It was the right thing to do 30 years on since Laurie founded the company.
Yeah, it's a fairly typical story, particularly in the AV industry, that a founder runs his course through the business and does well out of it and all the rest of it, but gets to the stage in life where he's looking to find the exit path. When I first came on board, which was over 5 years ago, he'd always made it very clear that was his strategy, was to find that exit, and had kind of brought me in to help him find that path.
As a business, with the segments you already had in place for many years, you were. I said in my questionnaire that you're almost COVID-19 ready to deal with this.
The reactions had to be very tailored to each of the jurisdictions that we operate in, because every country was experiencing, versions of lockdown or impact of the COVID situation at different times, and each country dealt with it in slightly different ways. So we couldn't just have one blanket, this is our solution for all of our COVID response across all our offices. We had to be very, very, tailored specifically to each country. And of course, being in the AV industry and very much, heavily versed in the unified communication side of that, all of our offices are set up with, very strong infrastructure to have people working remotely. So we very quickly divided all, did all the basic stuff, like divided the teams into A, B, C, or A and B, whichever suited the particular size of the office in the country. Everybody was ready to work from home if needed, and all those types of things were put in place very quickly. And then, sort of on the other side of the coin, a lot of our clients were also having worked with them for many years, have got their infrastructure in place in a fairly robust way. So again, they were moving into their responses to the COVID situation fairly rapidly. So we had reasonably good business continuity, particularly for the cities that were more organized, like Hong Kong, Singapore, Tokyo, those Seoul, those type of cities where the impact was probably not quite as harsh as in some places, but equally that the infrastructure in those cities was maintained quite well.
With the remote working schedule for most companies, I mean, you deal very largely with the large corporate companies to put a solution in place for AV conferencing and unified communications. With that not being able to happen in the office, were you able to help them expand to their managers, to their staff working from home? Could you implement systems for them on their behalf?
Yeah, it's again different responses in different cities, but yes, in essence, there were situations where we were supporting our clients to help them decamp from their offices and have their staff working from home and giving them the tools to do that. So there was a lot of uptake in very basic USB cameras and microphone, but also just making sure that our engineers were still, if legally able to be on site in their offices, making sure all of their infrastructure was still running. We still had to make sure that everything was switched on and operational. So we worked very closely with a lot of the teams to make sure that that everything was working. And the very interesting kind of recent conversations I've been having with a number of those large clients is that how grateful they are of having a managed service, whether it's a remote managed service or an in-house managed service team that's available to go in and make sure that anything that needs to be switched on and run, or any maintenance or preventative maintenance that needs to be carried out was all done, as efficiently as possible.
And it's not going to go away, is it? I mean, these were things we dabbled with in the past, but now the central part of the business unit now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the whole COVID situation has really accelerated the path that we're on anyway. There was we were going down the path, it was just at a much slower pace.
Going forward, obviously, Mr. Baird and his merry men, they want to know how you're going to do next year, and I'm sure you've had to look into a sort of a hazy crystal ball, and what did it show you, Matthew?
We are actually just starting to do some of our forecasting for next year. We're having a look at what's coming down the pipe. And you're actually right, it's very foggy. There are some organizations that are quite organized, and we do have some vision of what's going on. But there's lots that are not opening their hand yet, and because I think internally they don't know what the next steps are. I think we're still in this stage of most of the large corporates. They kind of realize that people are going to come back to the office at some point in time. They just don't know when that will be and in what format that will be. So there's still a lot of debate around what the function of an office is going to be in the medium term, I would say. Whether it's going to be back to normal as we were before, whether it's going to be, I doubt it's going to be everybody's working from home. A lot of the commentary that I'm getting from the various clients that I talk to, that there's still a reasonable groundswell of people within their organization, even if they say you can work from home, that actually want to work in an office. And again, using Asia as an example, there's a lot of countries in Asia where work from home doesn't really work that well, because at home you've got multi-generations living there. Places like Hong Kong in particular, the homes are quite small, so you can't work from home in a productive way. So people want to come to the office so they can be productive. And also the cities can be quite dense, so the travel times from home to the office is not that significant. Whereas, in US or Europe, where, getting into London and you live in the outer suburbs, it can take, an hour and a half or whatever it happens to be on the train. If you had a satellite office that you could go to, or you built an office in your home that you could, in the bottom end of the garden somewhere, it's a very different spectrum, right? So I think it's going to be different responses in different places.
What's given you the most satisfaction this year, Matthew?
One thing that's been very positive for us is the response, of the teams that we've got to the circumstances that's going on. There has been some challenging times, without a doubt. There's been some stresses along the way, but our teams have responded, in a very positive way. And certainly in locations that have had to have periods of time in lockdown and periods of time where they've had to gear up really quickly to take advantage of those windows of opportunity to get work done, the teams have responded really well to that. And also just, some of the understanding from our clients as well, the ones that have been, supportive of us and helping facilitate us to get access to sites and push things through when we have the opportunity to do the work. And I think that's been quite encouraging. And I think, at the end of the day, it's also good to see that a lot of the infrastructure that you build is actually getting utilized in the way that it's supposed to be, used. And you get those recognition, those emails of recognition from the clients to say thank you very much, and thank you for keeping everything switched on and working for us, because without it, their businesses would have suffered a lot more.